So everyone pointed to 2022 as the year that changed the guard in NASCAR, but I'd argue 2023 has been much more impactful. It's not your usual suspects winning races and competing for championships. Chase Elliott just missed the playoffs for the first time in his entire career. Alex Bowman missed it for the first time as a Hendrick driver, and then look on the team perspective. The JGR 18, now 54, and the Penske number 2, they spent the last decade winning races and making it to the championship 4. Even those teams aren't their usual selves, and instead, we have this new Pandora's box of competitive drivers and teams that have finally been able to showcase their hard work in this 2023 NASCAR Cup Series season. NRF Productions presents the Spotter's Guide predicting the 2023 NASCAR Cup Series playoffs. Look, it's easy to say that you have a strong work ethic. I know there's plenty of NASCAR drivers out there that pride themselves as a hard worker, and yet, where are you in points? 18th? 19th? You're not even a contender. For a driver like William Byron, I'm sure many fans thought that he's not doing enough, considering that when you swipe the ID card to get into Hendrick Motorsports, you're not expected to run 10th, 15th, and win 1 to 2 races. You're expected to be a championship contender, and it must have been a bit frustrating for William Byron to sit there and see Chase Elliott win in 2020, and then Kyle Larson go on a tear in 2021. But you know what? William Byron kept persevering. He kept on the path to try to find the end of the rainbow. Like Jeff Gordon in 1998, Rudy Fugle embodied the attention to detail of Ray Evernham, even working on the holiday break. And you can tell this season that this driver crew chief combination has worked harder than anybody else to try to find that pot of gold at the end, which in the case of this 24 team has been 5 victories, a career high for William Byron. This was the driver we all thought he could become, and now he is entering the playoffs with the most wins as a Hendrick driver since Kyle Larson when he won 5 races, ironically, in 2021. William Byron is your championship favorite, and now in these playoffs, he's hoping to further continue to rewind that clock back to 1998, almost parallel to Jeff Gordon's 13-win 1998 season. Speaking of turning back the clock, Martin Truex Jr. sat in his home after the 2022 NASCAR Cup Series season, saw that Martinsville clock in his house and said, you know what, I'm going to turn back the clock to 2017. I don't know how he did it, or I don't know what he cut out. I mean, you could make an insensitive joke that he cut the cancer out of his life, considering what happened in the offseason. Regardless, this is the stage winner MTJ Dominator style Martin Truex Jr. that won it all in 2017. Ironically, like in 2017, he's the regular season champion, and so the 19 team, they are locked into the playoffs. However, there's just one thing that is going to bite Martin Truex Jr. and something he needs to overcome. How many times is he going to finish second? Everyone forgets we could be talking about the Martin Truex Jr. dynasty, but instead he lost the damn war in 2018, finished second in 2019, and then a late race restart derailed everything for him in 2021. Martin Truex Jr. has a lot to be angry about. It worked in the regular season, and now in the playoffs, I know he's not content with having another runner-up season. So this is why James Small and the 19 are going to be firing on all cylinders in these playoffs. At this point in his career, Denny Hamlin has to be getting asked the same question that people asked Dale Earnhardt when he attempted to win the Daytona 500 all those years back. Are you ever going to win it? Denny Hamlin has been frustratingly close to winning the NASCAR Cup Series championship. Arguably, his biggest heartbreak was 2022 when, of course, there has to be this spectacular NASCAR move of the decade to knock Denny Hamlin out of the playoffs. Really, nothing in the regular season matters besides getting there. Denny Hamlin won 2 races, ironically, by roughing up Kyle Larson. And now he is yet again in the spot he's been many years before, where he's got that chance but now he needs to execute so that he can have that one piece of hardware eluding his NASCAR Cup Series career. You know, if Denny Hamlin actually pulls this off, I wonder if every crew member and every driver lines up on pit road to congratulate him on the championship. Actually, considering all the friends he's made, probably not. If you were a NASCAR Cup Series driver and you wanted to see where you stacked up against the competition, if you were having a good season or a bad season, for the last 3-4 years, all you had to do was check where Chris Buescher is in the point standings and say, yep, I'm doing good, or man, I need to improve. Well, based on how Chris Buescher has performed this year, there's 30 drivers right now that are having an abysmal season. Chris Buescher always struck me as a driver that wasn't too flashy or aggressive in his craft. He just got down and made sure he got the best result for his team, hence why he is considered the NASCAR Mendoza line. It's something that has finally worked out for him because he's just continued to hammer on that rock, chipping away, and finally you're seeing it break because he's won not one, not two, but 3 races for the 17 car. What is this, 2012? Chris Buescher, in the blink of an eye, went from a guy that's just like, hey, yeah, he's just a guy making up the mid-pack, to one of the most intimidating drivers right now, considering his hot streak of 3 wins in the last 5 races. Kyle Busch in this 2023 season has been hungrier than ever to prove to the fans that he's not washed up, to prove to Joe Gibbs that he made a mistake letting go of a generational talent, and of course to prove to M&Ms that they made a huge financial mistake sitting there allocating all the money that was going into the race team over to a Super Bowl ad with Maya Rudolph. It took him all of 2 races with Richard Childress Racing to prove why he is one of the best to ever race in the NASCAR Cup Series. Although technically he did win the Daytona 500 in 1998 rules.
Back in 1998, that would be the win, boys.
His 2023 season has seen 3 different wins. The final race at the Auto Club Speedway, winning Talladega in the number 8 to trigger all the Dale Earnhardt Jr. fans, and then Gateway, a complete domination on the part of homeboy Randall Burnett winning at his home track. I expect that to continue into the playoffs. Kyle Busch is hungry to win that 3rd NASCAR Cup Series championship, prove that he could do it all without Adam Stevens and Joe Gibbs Racing and all the M&M's funding. Really, all it'll take is a championship appearance and, of course, winning it to show that Kyle Busch is really a jack of all trades, no matter what scenario, I rise to the top kind of driver. 2023 Kyle Larson hasn't been the typical Kyle Larson we see on the racetrack. I honestly thought this was going to be the year because you look at Kyle Larson when he gains confidence. He goes on a tear, and you'd think winning Richmond, winning Martinsville would change everything. Instead, weirdly enough, Kyle Larson is finally getting a taste of his own medicine. And of course, Kyle Larson, in this situation, he could have said, hey, this is how I race and this is how I expect people to race me. Nope, that's not what you get. And instead, Kyle Larson has been your typical NPC NASCAR driver, having a problem with how Ross Chastain raced him. Of course, having a problem with Denny Hamlin drifting him up the racetrack when, I don't know, I've seen him pull that move at least 5 times in the last year and a half. Kyle Larson is an incredible talent, but he's gotta cut out this NPC shit. Because not only is this hypocritical, this is like if Jeff Gordon complained about the bump and run back in 2005. But I think it's also distracting him. He needs to embrace being the maverick of racing, being someone that can do any type of racing, dirt racing. He's going to do the Indy 500 next year. He needs to just have that smooth, I'm not intimidated by anything type of confidence instead of whatever this is. If he does that, Kyle Larson is as dangerous as ever, and he might be able to win 2 titles in 3 years. Christopher Bell has been another driver that's been just kind of quiet, and maybe that's for good reason because the 20 team and Adam Stevens, they've continued their consistency. Although there's two things that I see really derailing this team. Number one is the fact that they're just not on the level of the 19 and the 11. Then at times we've seen Christopher Bell be a bit streaky, especially at some of the tracks coming up in the first round. That is why I have my doubts about this 20 team, but then again, this is a team that gained a lot of experience with last year's playoffs, winning when it mattered the most, and then making it to the championship and coming up a bit short. That is going to be what determines how Christopher Bell's season ends. Does it go a step further than 2022, or does he fizzle back into his old ways? For example, his performance at super speedway races. What type of push was that going into the corner on Ty Gibbs? It's weird how sometimes life throws you a curveball where things feel the same but things feel different. That's been the case of Ross Chastain's 2023 season, to where as a driver he hasn't really changed at all. He's still being overly aggressive, and perhaps rightfully so. Ross Chastain is racing for himself, racing for his team. And honestly, if we're being honest, Ross Chastain needs to start carrying a mirror with him, and anytime a driver criticizes him for being overly aggressive, Ross Chastain simply takes the mirror out of his pocket and gives it to that said driver that criticized him. Where things are different is in terms of Trackhouse Racing. They don't have the novelty of being the new kid on the block. Trackhouse Racing had expectations this season. Daniel Suarez already failed miserably by not even making the playoffs. Ross Chastain, while he did win at Nashville, which was a statement win for his career, despite all the adversity, all the naysayers like Kyle Larson and Rick Hendrick criticizing him, at times the number one team has been shaky. They haven't had that same pizzazz that they had when they went out and stunned the world in 2022. That's why I'm kind of at a mix of emotions as to how Ross Chastain is going to do, like in life when you just don't know how things are going. When Brad Keselowski joined RFK Racing in 2022, everyone was thinking, Brad, what are you doing? Because we all knew at the time Roush Fenway Racing was a meme. It was just so funny, guys, to laugh about how this team was the Kmart of NASCAR teams, how they had 5 teams that were so good in 2005, and then all of a sudden, at a blink of an eye, they went to 2 subpar teams, and they were just going the way of many other dying dinosaurs. And perhaps from a meme perspective, it's been tough to see RFK Racing really resurge, and this is where I am going to glorify the strength of RFK. It starts with Brad Keselowski coming in, bringing all of his expertise that he had running Brad Keselowski Racing and being in the Team Penske system, and then applying it to this entire organization. Brad Keselowski hasn't been the biggest beneficiary, but he's back in the playoffs after an abysmal 2022 season. It was those hardships that really built this character in Brad Keselowski, and you're seeing it. You're seeing the strength of RFK. And that's why Brad Keselowski is someone that is going to be in the mix in the playoffs. He's not going to be out in the round of 16 and the round of 12. Brad Keselowski is a veteran driver. He has the experience of going through these situations. And with the strength of RFK, Brad Keselowski has a compelling argument to say that he could be a sleeper pick for this championship 4. Tyler Reddick was seen as the franchise driver to lead 23XI Racing to the promised land of wins and championships. At COTA this year, we saw what could happen when 23XI and the 45 team rallied around this generational talent by absolutely dominating and leaving a soft spot in Kurt Busch's heart. This is where a lot of the positives end, because this 23XI team has been streaky. Tyler Reddick has made mistakes, and then you have the 23XI pit crew yet again screwing up in critical situations. You know, if I'm Denny Hamlin, I would think about getting 23XI Racing into the funeral business, because you get some of those crew members to be the pallbearers and they can just let down someone for the final time. So there's 2 things that you have to ask about Tyler Reddick in these playoffs. Is 23XI Racing going to screw him over? And the second thing, is Tyler Reddick finally going to get past the hump? I know this is only his 3rd playoffs, but in 2021 and 2022, he failed to make the round of 12, and you could argue he choked in both of those. This team has a lot of trends and a lot of demons to break if they want to compete for this championship alongside the top dogs in this 2023 season. When it comes to Team Penske, we're starting to get some trends, mainly when it comes to Joey Logano. When it's even years, it's Joey Logano being like prime Michael Jordan, putting up elite numbers and winning championship after championship after championship. When it's odd years though, you get whatever has happened to Joey Logano this year, where he only has one win, and this was at Atlanta. It's not like he went to an intermediate or a short track and went out and got the win. That was his ticket into the playoffs, and ever since he has been quite streaky. There are times where Joey Logano has races like Indianapolis where he's just out here dive bombing drivers, or at Pocono when he gets dumped and he wants you to put this thing up. When it comes to Joey Logano in 2023, trends don't lie, because you're seeing it in the stats. He's not having the year you'd expect from Joey Logano. Team Penske, more than likely, they're in a bit of a slump, and you can tell, especially with their flagship driver, that this organization has a lot of catching up to do when it comes to this 10-race fight. The same can be said for his teammate Ryan Blaney. You know, there was a little stretch in this season where Ryan Blaney looked like he had some hope. Charlotte, he goes out and has his career race, and then the next week at Gateway, he leads a lot of laps and gets a top 5 finish. Besides being NASCAR's new crash dummy, Ryan Blaney has been incredibly invisible these last 24 races. In order to finally shut up the critics like Kyle Petty, comparing him to Casey Kane, saying that he's a driver that is hyped up so much and never does anything, Ryan Blaney is going to have to overcome the speed and overcome trends. Ryan Blaney, despite year after year after year being in Team Penske equipment, he has never made it to the championship 4. And this is the main demon that Ryan Blaney is going to have to tame in these next 9 weeks to get to the championship. Michael McDowell 5 years ago wasn't even a blip on the radar. Nobody even gave him a second thought. We all saw Michael McDowell as this God-fearing guy that is just kind of out here at Front Row Motorsports, loving what he does with the Loves team. However, that blip on the radar, it got closer and closer. 2021, Michael McDowell wins the Daytona 500 to make the playoffs. 2022, this team puts up their most consistent season with the most top 10s, and if it weren't for that points penalty, Michael McDowell would have gotten his second straight top 20 finish. 2023 is where that battleship gets into range in the midst of the playoff conversation and finally strikes their competition at the Indianapolis road course when Michael McDowell went out, broke the heart of Chase Elliott, and clinched his spot into the postseason. Michael McDowell has already broken a lot of hearts, but he can break some more and trigger some of his competitors like he did on X whenever he liked that one tweet about how school shootings would be solved with more God. Okay, what did I tell you guys back in February? Well, what I told you in a 20-minute video form was that winning the Daytona 500 changed everything for Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and JTG Doherty Racing. A lot of NASCAR fans didn't see that. They thought he was going to go back to being Ricky Stenhouse Jr. at Auto Club and finishing 24th. That has not been the case because Mike Kelly has done a phenomenal job getting this team solid 12th to 15th place finishes. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is having a career year and he's made less mistakes, although you might not want to have him in the United Nations considering how he ran at Indianapolis. But that's just one race, and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. has defied a lot of expectations of what a lot of fans thought he was going to do this season. Now we're at the playoffs and everyone's laughing at him, saying he doesn't belong here, he's a for sure first round exit. What a lot of people are forgetting is that the round of 16, it's about survival. We've seen plenty of drivers, plenty of contenders shoot themselves in the foot in this first round, and it gives opportunity for some drivers that we thought were like on the cut line that weren't going to be competitive, but they ended up putting a hell of a fight to get into the second round. And when you look at Ricky Stenhouse Jr.'s latest finish at playoff tracks, there's a fighting chance that this 47 team, if they just sit there and do the little things right, make sure they get all the lug nuts on, make sure that they are getting solid finishes, not shooting themselves in the foot and making bonehead moves. I'll say this, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. will not only make it to the round of 12, but there's a 20% chance he will be in the round of 8. Last Saturday night, when Kevin Harvick completed the final regular season race of his storied career, the NBC reporters asked what Kevin Harvick thought or expected was going to be the outcome in this playoffs. Kevin Harvick, in few words, stated that he isn't going to predict anything. And I think that's fair, considering that this is a driver that's been through it all. 23 years, he knows the ins and outs of racing. And when you look at this Ford team this season, it's been kind of that. There's some tracks where Kevin Harvick and Rodney Childers are competitive, like Phoenix, where he should have won before that final caution changed everything. Then you've got Kevin Harvick's abysmal performance on tracks like road courses this year, where he wasn't even a factor. That's why I say Kevin Harvick is the most unpredictable driver in these playoffs, the one we don't know, because I honestly can see him being out in the round of 16, out in the round of 12, where he doesn't even make any noise. Or I could honestly see him pulling off a fairy tale storybook ending where he goes into Phoenix, a track he's dominated, wins the final race, and takes home the championship, which would be his second in his NASCAR career. The thing that separates the drivers that want to be the show and the drivers that want to be in the show is just how much work and how they view certain obstacles and adversities throughout the season. Bubba Wallace could have easily went into Indianapolis and Watkins Glen and said, I'm not a good road course racer. I can't do it. Man, I'm going to miss the playoffs and all this woe is me type of shit. But you know what? To Bubba Wallace's credit, he didn't do that. He went in and put the work into how to be a better road course racer. At Watkins Glen, Bubba Wallace told himself he wasn't going to mess up. He wasn't as bad of a road course racer as he thought. And because of that, Bubba Wallace performed to where he got the result he needed to put in a sizable points gap between he and the cut line, to where as long as there wasn't a new winner, Bubba Wallace would be a first-time playoff driver. This is a driver that manned up when he needed to the most, and now he's gonna wear his heart on his sleeve as he now heads into his first ever NASCAR Cup Series playoff race. I'm interested to see how Bubba Wallace is going to do. He's the 16th seed. He has officially achieved what he set out to do, and now I think it's just go out and try to see if he can better what his teammate Tyler Reddick has done the last 2 years, make it far into these playoffs, and surprise the NASCAR world and all of the people that clown on him for being Bubba Smollett and a guy that faked a hate crime. The 2023 NASCAR Cup Series playoff schedule is what you expect. We go to Darlington for the Southern 500, then we've got Kansas, then we've got Bristol. The round of 12, we've got your chaotic round in Texas, Talladega, and the Charlotte Roval. The round of 8 is where things get serious, where we've got Las Vegas, Homestead, and Martinsville to decide who is going to race for the title in Phoenix. And something that's going to be even more interesting is that for Phoenix and Martinsville, we are going to get a completely new tire. Maybe things are going to be good, or maybe we get a 2008 Brickyard 400 of a playoff race. The wide open nature of those races and the wide open nature of the drivers competing for this championship is why we are entering a NASCAR playoffs where anything can happen. We don't know who is exactly going to step up to the plate in certain rounds and be able to challenge for this championship. And that's what makes predicting these rounds more fun. And if you end up getting it right, it is more of a bragging right. So let's get into it. Round of 16. Who do I have getting eliminated after Darlington, Kansas, and Bristol? This is where I'm going to surprise you guys, as Ross Chastain, Christopher Bell, Michael McDowell, and Tyler Reddick are your drivers out in the round of 16. These drivers have been shaky at times. They haven't performed exactly well at these tracks, and so I just do not see them advancing past the round of 16. So if you guys think me having 2 drivers that made it to the championship for last year, not even making it past the round of 16 is chaotic, well, I've got some even bigger eliminations in the round of 12. Kyle Larson, Joey Logano, Bubba Wallace, and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. will not make it past the round of 12. Kyle Larson, I think it all comes down to the fact that he hasn't thrived in adversity, and guess what? The round of 12 is full of adversity with Talladega and the Charlotte Roval. Joey Logano, same way. He hasn't had the greatest season, and I see his chances ending in this round. So now we get to the round of 8, and who do I have not making it to that elusive championship for? Kevin Harvick in his final season will come up one round short of ending like Jeff Gordon did in 2015. Brad Keselowski will just narrowly miss the cut alongside Denny Hamlin, as yet again he will have a frustrating heartbreak, and Ryan Blaney, who will yet again repeat history. Leading to my championship 4 is I've got Kyle Busch, Chris Buescher, Martin Truex Jr., and William Byron competing for the Bill France Cup in Phoenix. In terms of this 2023 NASCAR Cup Series season, these drivers are the hungriest, angriest, hard-working group of drivers, and because of that, that is why I have these 4 names being the drivers that represent the NASCAR Cup Series in their championship race and trying to solidify their names as a NASCAR Cup Series champion. I have no doubt in my mind you guys enjoyed the chaos of these predictions, which is why I encourage you to watch the 2024 NASCAR Silly Season video, as well as my predictions for the 2023 NASCAR Truck Series playoffs. Other than that, this is Nathan for Digital Gashouse. Life's a beach, and then you drive.